Hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I am your host, Paul.
And I'm Lauren.
And we are joined once again this month by a friend of the show, longtime friend of ours, Nick Delgadillo. Nick, how are you?
Ba-ba-da-da-da-da. Hello. I'm very honored that I'm back again after my horrendous. Who knows what I was talking about when we were talking about Matrix Resurrections last time. Nope, not the same. I had a better talk about like Free Guy, a movie I did not like, than Matrix, which I did like. Was
I had
not
a great time with that conversation. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
I'm good. I don't remember it. I blocked it out of my mind. I have no clue what I was talking about.
What's interesting is, and I will be honest with our dear listeners here and you for a second, that is our most partially downloaded episode of the month.
Well, yeah. What's this stuff?
My general theory is actually that it's because most people did not like that all of us hated Free Guy.
Fuck it. You like a crappy movie, that's your opinion, but I'm going to be blatantly honest about how bad it is.
I don't like that.
My job.
And so my general theory is that most people were like, I liked Free Guy, I'm turning it off.
That's your choice, man. Do you.
Well, you downloaded it anyway.
Exactly.
So Nick is back to continue on with us on our discussion of movies that we missed in 2021. One of these films made it to his best of 2021 list.
It is the best one out of the best ones. It is the one.
All right. I won't let you know what it is. There is a link down below so you can go back and listen to it, but I also think it'll come forward in the conversation itself. But this week is all about, we did like sci-fi big blockbuster stuff. We did biopics. We did like sort of period films, focusing on also different directors and different styles and how they achieved period. And so for this last episode of January, we decided to do what I'm calling chills, thrills, and animals. And so it's all about horror films, thriller films, folklore, folktale stuff, some of which has to do with animals, some not. But I think it's going to be a really interesting episode, and we're going to be using the films Antlers, Lamb, Old, and Pig. It's also a whole bunch of single word titles this month.
You said that so nicely, and all I was like, it's one word things. Yeah.
Before we get too deep into the discussion, I think it's worth a question, and I don't know if it's been asked on the show before. What for y'all is the difference between thriller and horror? And Nick, I'm gonna drop it on you first.
Repeat the question. I keep losing you.
What's the difference between thriller and horror?
What's the difference between thriller and horror? It's a good question because thrillers can obviously like straddle the line there. I think horror very intentionally like is a little more like visceral, either like visually or maybe it's a combination of everything like movies are. It's the music, it's the sound design, it's the acting, it's horror movies I guess could no, I don't know. Yeah, that's a really hard question that you've given me. How dare you? I was gonna say, horror can have like more blood and guts. That's not like essentially true either, because thrillers can also be really like really violent, really viscerally violent in that way too. I don't know. I think it just comes down to the filmmaker's intent, I guess. Is this a horror movie or is it a thriller movie?
That's a perfectly good answer. Dear, how about you?
No, this is a toughie. I don't know. I guess I feel like with horror, the intent is to like to push the envelope, to horrify, to scare.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with a thriller, you can have like those heightened emotions, and like the situation can be exciting, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, I guess, scary to be a thriller. Like I feel like some things that get put into like the thriller category aren't really scary at all, but they're more like, I don't know, I guess I don't, what is that movie?
See, it's a hard question.
The I See Dead People's one.
Sixth Sense.
I feel like Sixth Sense is supposed to be like a thriller, but it's not a horror movie. It's supposed to be like, you know.
See, but that's the line that M. Night Shyamalan always straddles there. He personally, if you look at like interviews and stuff, he says that what he makes are thrillers. He doesn't consider it like a horror, but he obviously, I mean, like any thriller, he takes a lot of influence from horror, and there are definitely moments in all of his movies that are like, that's pretty much just a straight up like horror sequence or moment,
Mm-hmm.
or image.
No, yeah. And I think that's, for me, probably like where the line is like where the intentionality is, because like the Saw movies are horror movies. Their goal is to, at the end of the day, push the limits of what is scary by putting you as the viewer through all of these different trials through these characters, whereas like a thriller doesn't necessarily like do that in a way that like makes you actively like cringe, if that makes sense. Not all of the time.
No, yeah.
I think that it's kind of like the like a rectangle, like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. Like a thriller can be scary, but a horror movie isn't always like a thriller, I guess, for me.
So it's that next step, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was doing a lot of Lamb, kind of one of the movies that we're talking about, kicked me into this drive of wanting to go back and re-examine a text that I read when I was in school, Barbara Creed's The Monstrous Feminine. And the sort of structural framework for The Monstrous Feminine is based on Julia Kristeva's The Power of Horror,
Mm-hmm.
which is all about how horror is represented in literature. And I think literature started with horror before it had the thriller, if that makes sense. I think that the thriller is almost on a certain level an offshoot cinematically of horror.
Mm-hmm.
And for Kristeva, a lot of what, especially under like a sort of psychoanalytical framework, a lot of it has to do with this idea of what is abject. And based on my reading this week, and if I'm wrong, email me at thefilmbudspodcasts@gmail.com to let me know how wrong I am.
Do it.
I'm emailing you right now.
Essentially what happens is the abject is kind of when certain parts of life that have been declared as outside of societal structure, right? So things to do with the corpse, things to do with murder, things to do with the animal nature of things collide with the self and kind of destroy and for a moment blur that boundary and force us to examine what is us, what is other. and it kind of for a little while there obliterates self. This is all very heady, and I apologize for listeners, and it kind of obliterates that boundary and forces us to examine it, and the horror film ends up being kind of a ritual for us to re-identify who we are. And I think that a thriller can get away with not doing that. You can just have an abject, or not even an abject, but you can just have a vile killer and a pure good, where it's a cat and mouse game or some sort of, ticking clock kind of thing, but we don't for a second really have that blurring of the boundary of what differentiates us from the other. And I think that that's what probably makes a horror film.
That's interesting.
I also really thought about it, and I was like, I use my mom as like a spectrum for watching movies a lot, because there are a lot of things that like Karen does not get all the way through. And I think that like I think that thrillers are like something that's more of like my mother's kind of like horror movie. It's just a taste of scary, but like there's still some other elements to it. It's not just all horror all of the time.
I think
it depends, and it's such a wide-ranging thing also, because the horror movie can have like it can be like a Saw movie, just blood, guts, and screaming and everything, and a horror movie could also be like something completely different. Doesn't have to have. It can be some like minimal violence, if any, stuff like that. Some stuff's just like weird, like atmospheric, like.
No, yeah, it gives you those like the hairs on the back of your neck moment, where you're like, I don't like this kind of situation, regardless of how necessarily gory I guess it is. It's to the user to deem how scary it truly is.
I think horror movies more like can unsettle you, as opposed to a thriller. Again, a thriller can so obviously probably unsettle you plenty, but I feel like there's more, I guess it comes down, like I said, more intent there to unsettle, to throw you off balance, to scare you.
I mean, like, thriller can also be pretty much, for me, it's kind of like a throwaway term, because like roller coasters can be thrilling. So like, it really just depends on like what the adrenaline rush you're looking for is like the thrill of it. I guess, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Because like Seven is a thriller, and most of David Fincher's work is a thriller. But then you get into some of the movies that we watched, for this episode, and like Old, even though sometimes it is thrilling, it is decidedly a horror film.
You think so?
See, I was going to go the other way around.
Because I think it's a thriller, and like I said, you ask M. Night or anybody, and they'll say it's a thriller, not a horror movie. But it goes.
For me, it comes down to one scene on Old.
I know it's a cave.
I was thinking it was definitely like a thriller with like moments of horror.
Yeah, well, that's again, like I said, that's M. Night's work. Like is Signs a thriller, or is it a horror movie? And like, it's that blend that he loves.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
I'll go off if he says his intent is that he makes thrillers and that he's making thrillers, then that's what it is. But again, it's part of what I like so much about his movies, is that there are definitely plenty of parts that it just is like unapologetic, like full tilt, like that's scary, like that's.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, even Stephen King says that he writes thrillers.
Oh, well, that's insane to me. I think Stephen Killer has written some Stephen King. What did I say? Stephen Killer?
You did. Stephen Killer. Well, I think he'd love that, honestly.
That's good. I think Stephen King has written thrillers, but I think most of his stuff is definitely horror. No, I'll disagree. I'll disagree with the artist there. If M. Night says he makes thrillers, yeah, okay, I'm with you. If Stephen King says he makes thrillers, no.
That's right.
Come on now. Come on.
I guess it's almost kind of a chicken or an egg argument, which came.
That Stephen King in writing is more thrilling than like any version of Stephen King on film.
Screen.
Yeah, on screen. I think that they like to push the like, this is the point of it. It's supposed to be scary. Whereas like we read Carrie, and like most of that is just like a teenage girl trying to figure herself out. Instead, like the movie version is always like the blood and the pigs and things, Oh, look at this girl. She murdered those bitches,
Well, I think that's honestly a pretty good debate. I don't think that we necessarily came up with an answer, but I also think that it is up for kind of the individual viewer to come up with an answer.
Well,
on a certain
yeah,
level.
because like at the end of the day, we each have our own spectrum for what is scary.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go off of your scary and like, I can't, you can't go off of mine. It really just depends on the person watching it to tell, I guess, whether or not it has officially stepped over the boundary of, instead of it being a thriller, it is actually horror.
No, absolutely. Well, we cover a whole spectrum of films, and we can, I guess, as part of our discussion, talk about what we feel each of them are. But we're going to start off with the film Antlers, and we have a clip, so let's take a listen.
What is storytelling? Storytelling started with our indigenous people. Can anyone give me an example of a myth or a story they're afraid of?
So that was Antlers, and the premise is, in an isolated Oregon town, a middle school teacher and her sheriff brother become embroiled with her enigmatic student, whose dark secrets lead to terrifying encounters with an ancestral creature. It's directed by Scott Cooper. It's written by Henry Chasen and Nick Antosca. And Nick Antosca actually wrote the short story that this is based on. It's an adaptation called The Quiet Boy, with a final draft by the director Scott Cooper. And it stars Kerry Russell, Jesse Plemons, Jeremy T. Thomas, Graham Greene, Scott Hayes, and Rory Cochrane. And Nick, I'm going to start with you. Nick, what did you think of Antlers?
Oh, what a letdown Antlers was. Here's what I like about Antlers. I like the cast a lot. I like the concept here. To get a little bit into it, Antlers takes place at really kind of interchangeable, American town that's in the modern day. We're looking at some supply chain issues, or it's run down. It's a place that was obviously was booming like a generation ago, and by next generation it's a place that seems like it might not even be there anymore. Just in decay. It's in the grip of the opioid crisis, among other things. Antlers has all this like backdrop around what's essentially just a monster story, just a monster movie, where this kid's dad and older brother are turned into a monster, and he's keeping him locked up in his house. What I don't like is that by the end of it's instead of it either has to just be a monster movie, or it has to go for like whatever metaphor it's going for. And the problem I think with this movie is that it wants the monster to be like every metaphor. Like, is the monster like, at first it's like, it seems like the monster is kind of like nature's like reckoning, right? This is for polluting the earth, destroying the earth and everything. And we see that like the decay of the town and everything. I'm sure, what once was beautiful has now been destroyed, blah, blah, blah. So it's getting his revenge. But it's also like a stand-in for like abuse, like domestic abuse, which I think is like the most muddled part of the whole thing. And that doesn't work. Again, there's so many ideas that I like here. I like that Kerry Russell's character is a character that's gone through abuse, and she's obviously the most compelling part of this. And I like the way they present that abuse, not in like a stupid, schlocky depiction of it. It's pretty subtle's not the word, but I don't know. I like that we just see it like in bursts, like really short bursts, like of clips of her
without
past.
ever actually like seeing the whole thing.
Yeah, there's not like a dragged out thing of it that's like, wow, this is, ugh. And nor is there like a stupid, like monologue. She's like, here's everything that I've been through, when I was blah, 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 blah. When I was blah, 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 blah. The issue is that like the monster is also supposed to be like abuse, and it's like this kid's dad is the abuser, but we don't see that. We see the opposite of that in this movie, which is where it gets really confusing for me, because we're told like, oh, the dad's like he's a meth addict. He's making meth when he's attacked at the very opening of the movie by a monster. But like he's shown to be a caring parent the entire time. And like so I'm confused as to how that works. You know what I mean? As to like they want him turned into a monster to also be like, oh, and that's this kid's being abused, blah blah blah. But we're shown that he cares for both of his kids, so I'm not sure that works. I don't like, and if we're going back to like the nature thing, this is a Native American legend creature. We have our one Native American actor here who does nothing except say like, oh, it's a Wendigo and it's bad, and that's it. That's all he's there for, which is terrible. The ending battle against the monster is goofy. I hate that it just comes down to, I'm sorry, should we just get into spoilers here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. No, fuck it.
I don't know. It just comes down to like a physical like a fight against it. Kerry Russell is a little too immediately accepting of a giant demon monster beast. Just like, okay, I guess I'm gonna fight this thing with a big pole now, or whatever she has.
Great,
I don't know. It's really fun. There's a lot of good ideas here. There's great acting. Visually wise, I mean, this movie's like stunning. Every shot looks so. Every part of this movie looks so good. The monster looks great. There's so much good, and I feel like it just ends on a note that's like, what was this about then? What actually are you trying to say? You know what I mean? And okay. What did you think of Antlers?
Dear?
I liked it. It wasn't great, but I enjoyed the ride.
I totally hear all of your points, and they are super valid. I don't know. I guess I maybe like got a different read on the fact that they were like pushing like the society's view of his addiction was like, oh, because he does meth, therefore he is X, Y, and Z of a person, and like, right, we should just accept the fact that this child is in school at all because it could be worse. And I feel like that is very much our public school system as it is right now. It's like, at least they're here and not doing drugs or something. Hey, pass that kid. Yeah. I think that It is interesting the fact that they like present him as a like loving parent. The exact opposite of these things is like circumstances like made him into this stereotype, even though he was like fighting against that until he gets attacked in the mines.
Right.
Which is interesting because then that, but then it's like for me, the part that I didn't like was his whole like transformation point, you know. Was it a werewolf story where it's like, oh, you know, it's, or is he a zombie kind of thing? Because it's like, you know, he's constantly getting fed death, basically, like living flesh.
He's the Wendigo. They explain it that he's always hungry, but the more he eats, the hungrier he gets.
No, and I get that. I feel like they just like get that to that point too late. I feel like because it for me it felt like a maybe he's gonna like, you know, I don't know, at the full moon he's gonna turn into the beast and that's the thing, or like is he a zombie and is like is he dead, you know, and this kid is just like trying to keep his family together. And I felt like for me the weakest part also of that was like the brother also being a part of it, because it didn't seem to be affecting that little boy the same way that it was affecting that man, and like it just
until it instantly really does.
Yeah, it was so strange.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Where like everything just ends up getting so muddled in itself, and like you're like that's where I get confused. Also, I'm like, and what is the kid being trapped in there with them? What does any of it mean?
Yeah, and like I do agree. I think that this movie looks so good. I thought that the creature was fantastic looking. Like when we finally get the look of him, when that first look when he's still like wearing the face, I was like, oh, you know, it was gross. I was like, this is what I wanted. But like I wanted more from it as well. You know, I thought that like they put so much effort into that last like final scare of like what the creature looked like that I did want that fight to be a little bit more challenging. Like this thing has leapt out of trees and murdered children and stabbed walls. No, literally, and it was like, yeah, just like stab him with a stick and then like stab him a few times in the back with a knife. I was like, you're kidding me.
And also, what does it mean that like the solution, if again, like because they want this thing they want the monster to like stand in for everything, like what are we saying at the end here? To defeat climate change or abuse or drug addiction or whatever this is, we have to physically fight it, to physically just beat the hell out of it.
No, yeah, and I guess from the description, going into this movie, I really thought that like the kid, the survivor, was gonna like do something at all other than just be like the sad skinny kid who's like getting abused, but not really, but kind of maybe. And it just he
has his own agency up until like the end when the monster is loose, so then he doesn't do anything after that.
What did you think about it, Stair?
I think everything is totally fair. So I've been taking notes a little bit more on every movie that we watch, and so like we open with this idea of myth, of folklore, of storytelling, and they tie that initially into indigenous Native American, you know, sort of storytelling. And then they ultimately introduce abuse, they introduce alcoholism, they introduce deforestation and the destruction of nature, which by the way, there's another name for like the like couch term that they use, like mountaintop mining, and I'm totally blanking on the term for it, but essentially like I grew up for a brief time in a mining community, Morgantown, West Virginia. And if I'm not mistaken, mountaintop mining essentially is this idea of you go through and you use dynamite to blow off like layer by layer of a mountain. Yeah. And they introduce this idea of what is trauma, what is a monster, And yeah, they have a lot of ideas spinning in the air. And ultimately, yeah, they don't land them all. The performances are great. Across the entire board, the performances are great. The cinematography is great. And they have all of the right intentions and ideas, but because it never settles on one, like both of y'all said, it ends up kind of falling flat. And like, you know, I love the whole cast, but even this is kind of a mid Jesse Plemons performance, if only because he has nothing to do.
He's not given enough to do, and then he's just taken out of it by the end.
His best moment for me was when he looks at his sister and goes, you have no idea what he did to me.
Yeah. Say, like, I love the dynamic between the brother and sister here, and you can, it's all on the actors, obviously, because like I said, I like that it's not in the script where they lay it out and spell it out for everybody. You just kind of have to go off what little knowledge you're given of their upbringing with the way their like the characters carry themselves, you know, with obviously this burden of what you can only, like he says, like you have no idea what they've been through. We can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And we never get, I think that for me, what the monster was supposed to be ultimately was about addiction. But because we never really saw the dad as like this, of the boy as this sort of guttered out addict. And because we also never had Kerry Russell like hit the bottle again. And because we never actually know what that pill that Jesse Plemons keeps popping is. And especially with, big spoiler alert, the fact that Jesse Plemons ends up being the next Wendigo at the end of the movie, it feels like it wants it, out of all of the things it presents as an option, to be about addiction.
Okay.
But like, I think that would have landed more if like Kerry Russell had adopted this kid, but also started hitting the bottle again. And then when the Wendigo left the dad that she just killed, the spirit went into her. You know, or if we knew that Jesse Plemons was like, you know, popping Oxycontin, you know, or something like that. And then after the dad was killed, the spirit moved into him. I think that could have helped land it on this idea of, it's about substance abuse. It's about substance reliance.
Then you've got to like cut all the rest, though. You've got to cut like the nature, the destruction of nature stuff. Like that's it. Just again, it's like I said, like they want it to be everything, and it ends up being nothing. So
absolutely.
Then you're like, well, then I wish it had just been a straightforward monster movie.
No, yeah, and I think that's my issue with the monsterism itself. Like, what are the rules of it? You know, you're like, oh, you got to cut out its beating heart, but literally, like zombies, if it fucking scratches you or whatever and you survive, now you are also it. So, like, what are the rules? How long does it take for you to schmeal out until you turn into said monster? Like,
and Graham Greene even goes and like tries to present the rules, and he was like, from my understanding of the way that Graham Greene's character, Warren Stokes, presented the rules, was like, it infests one person who embodies this idea, and that's it. And so then it's immediately complicated by the fact that it's almost like it's infecting two people at the same time.
Or maybe that's why the kid doesn't really have like any symptoms until after Pop is dead.
But he does have symptoms because
I mean,
like,
he does, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
You know,
he doesn't
Dad
have
is over here
symptoms like
losing.
Dad does. Yeah.
No, yeah, like the father was like losing hair, like, you know, we're looking real rough, like
I said, and then all of a sudden the kid's just gonna full blown turn into it like immediately at the end. Like,
no, yeah, and it took so
saying,
long
like,
for the dad to transform. Like he had to murder several people.
Yeah,
And
the
kid
rules
was like,
aren't
now
clear.
the dad's dead.
Also, like, the implications, obviously, like, by the end of it are like, so they're just not gonna, there's nobody we can call to be like, hey, we just experienced like a crazy monster thing that is responsible for the deaths of several people. Here's the proof. Here's wouldn't that kind of be
Literal
like
dead body in the
wouldn't that
mine.
be a bit of like a reality altering thing?
Yeah.
They kind of take it in stride at the end there. They're like, well, that was weird. And now we got this kid to take care of. that was a time, huh, Sheriff?
Indeed.
So, Nick, if you had to give Antlers a score, what would you give it?
I give Antlers 2 out of 5, man.
Woo!
Dear.
I just none of it. Like I give it a 2 because it's the performances. I love the way it looks. I love the way it's shot. But as far as the story goes, like, it just is. It ends up being so empty to me. Very frustrating.
I'm gonna go solid 3. It is middle of the road.
Okay. I'm gonna split the difference and go 2.5.
Love it.
I've had such a hard, like, I keep going back and forth. I wanted to do this last year, and I'm trying to do it this year, and I'm still having a hard time where I'm like, I want to commit to just giving like full stars. I want to stop. Sometimes I feel like it's cheating, like the half star thing. And I'm like, I just want to commit like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then I'm like, whoa, but like the half star kind of, can sneak in there.
Wiggle room, comfort zone.
Yeah, there's a little shimmy room where I like it a little more. I don't know. I'm trying to commit to the full stars right now, but like my mind changes every other day.
No, for sure. Well, I guess we should move on now to Lamb. And we have a clip, but joke's on you, it's not in English. So enjoy.
Nórar segja að tímaferðalag séu möguleg. Ekki það að ég eitthvað erindi fram í tíma. Það var bara gott, hér og nú.
Það verður örugglega líka hægt að fara aftur í tíma.
So that was Lamb. It is directed by Vladimir Johansson. And the premise is a childless couple, Maria and Ingvar, discover a mysterious newborn on their farm in Iceland. The unexpected prospect of a family life brings them much joy before ultimately destroying them. And it is written by Sion and Vladimir Johansson. And it is starring Numi Rapace, Hilmir Gudnason, and Bjorn Hjolner Haraldsson.
Props to you. I have no idea if you said that correctly or not, but I
Only
would not.
people in Iceland will know, and as far as I know, we don't have any listeners there, so joke's on them.
I would have had to rehearse. Or tackling.
I love that, like, looking at the character list, that they were like, we gotta have more people in this movie. So, like, bus driver, man on television. Like, I was like, yeah, guys.
They got to get their credit. They were
You.
So we started with Nick Deer. What did you think? Actually, let me start here. So a little bit of background, a little more on Lamb than any of the others. The director specifically says that this is a folktale. And for those who don't know, a folktale is a little bit more of a moral tale. It oftentimes involves more animals as like the leads, or like anthropomorphic characters as the leads, imbued into a situation that applies to reality, right? A fairy tale has human people with magical things happening around them. You can usually trace them back to a single author, but a folktale is an oral tradition that is passed down generation to generation, and it is ultimately meant to convey a story, meant to convey an idea, a moral, very specific. And a folk tale is kind of the micro to the macro of folklore. And folklore are all of the sort of oral traditions that are passed down from a generation to a generation that help create a cultural identity. So these are folk tales, jokes, idioms, all of these kinds of things that sort of create this broad umbrella of a folklore. And so this is supposed to be a neo-folk tale that is also very loosely based on a dream that the director had as a child, and also a book of poems. I don't know what book of poems. I really tried to find specifically what book of Icelandic poems it was, and I could not. But these were sort of all of the things that coalesced together to make Lamb. And so this isn't necessarily a direct horror film, but it is a folk tale. And so, dear, what did you think of Lamb?
I don't know what to think about this movie, man. This movie was like, what if we just were like really, really slow for a really long time and you watched these people do farm stuff for a good little bit, and then they add the brother in and he was like, let me maybe hit on your wife a little bit, ? I don't know how to feel about him either. And then we finally get to see the lamb baby, and whoa, questions on that as well. And then this movie like hits like from 0 to 60 miles per hour in the last like 2 minutes. Yeah. And then it just stops. And it just stops and you're like, but what the hell just happened? And and like I think I enjoyed the movie, but I feel like it had a lot of time just like hanging out with our main characters, and you know, you get this like sense that something is going to happen. It's like, you know, somebody is watching them kind of feeling going on, and like it literally refuses to tell you who it is until the last second of the movie, and then it's done, and then we're left with this I guess like question as an audience member of like, how am I supposed to feel about the Ram Man? How am I? I don't know. I wish I had more of him, maybe.
I never want to see him again.
And I also, I guess, don't really know what the lesson of the folk tale is. You know what I mean? Like, don't make a family with things that aren't real. Live in reality, I guess. Don't steal another person's baby or
I think it's
baby. I got a lot of questions. Yeah. It really feels like, you know, because they straight up take this lamb human baby, and start to raise it, and it's, I guess for me it feels like a weird like, don't abduct somebody else's child and pretend like you can raise it yourself, because shit is always gonna hit the fan. I don't know how to feel about this movie.
Somebody else go, man. Somebody else.
All right. Nick, after Lauren's confusion, what did you think?
I liked. So when I first watched this movie, I was into it, and then so then like, if you ever check like, you know, like how much time is left, you know, I suddenly realized I was like, there's like 12 minutes left of this movie, and you know, technically, you know, nothing has happened, you know, quote unquote. And then you get to the last 2 minutes of the movie, and then everything happens, and then it ends. And I was initially I was like, what the fuck? This was initially I was like disappointed in that, and I was like, I feel like we went through all this for a really like lackluster ending. by the end. After sitting on it for 2 days, I like it more. I understand. I think I understand more of what it's going for, and I do think it's kind of another one that straddles the line of it's like a metaphorical thing, but also for the sake of the story, it has to be a literal thing. So I think this movie. This is a woman who Noomi Rapace's character, who's wants a child, is grieving over a child, and whether you could interpret it when the lamb is born, and it's a lamb human hybrid thing within the movie. It's literal, right? But I think it could also, maybe you could interpret it, if you want, as like a maybe just the way her brain was at, where she was at. She just decided, like, I'm just gonna take this lamb. Like, I want a child that badly. I'm gonna take this newborn lamb. I'm gonna like raise it like like my daughter. I'm gonna say this is my daughter, kind of thing. And I think that also goes with when Uncle Peter shows up. And he's like, in one of the rare moments of the movie, is very funny. Like, just the deadpan, like, what the fuck is this?
Him feeding it.
yeah. Well, he's like the one who sees through. He's like, this is an animal. This isn't you can't raise this as like a person. This is an animal. And he obviously warms up to it later, and I think that's just kind of what goes hand in hand, right? You all can give into the delusion of it. So you could view it as that if you'd like. The ending will kind of shatter that in a way. But yeah, I think the whole purpose of this movie is to kind of be like how humans take, especially from the natural world, take, and take some more. And it's, to me, it becomes obvious when you go back and think about the murder of the sheep mother. Like the whole first half of the movie, the sheep mother wants their baby back, and then it ends with Noomi Rapace killing her. I think it just comes down like, don't that baby didn't belong to you. The baby was not hers to take, and she pays the price for it. I think it ends with her having to accept it. Like, that last shot of her is like her acceptance of what she has gone through, which is what she was incapable of doing at the start of the movie. Because she's just like, she's not really living. She's just kind of surviving at the start. I think so. It's like, she has to go through loss once again, and this time is maybe able to accept it, if only because, she brought on herself, and she knows that. She knows that, there's a price to be paid there. And that whatever happened with her and this lamb daughter, was never going to be like a permanent thing.
I think that's all really fair. I think this movie is, of the 4 movies that we watched, there are 2 of them that I have thought a lot about since finishing. And this is one of them. I think that Lamb is a really, really interesting story. And when I first finished watching it, I felt actively lost.
Yeah.
I felt like there was something that I needed to dig into, needed to understand.
You needed further clarification. Like, it's,
yeah.
You feel like it's not something that's like easily like understood, like individually.
And I thought that I had an idea around it, but I guess also I assumed that like my thinking on it was too simple. And I was absolutely on board with the scenery. I was absolutely on board with the character work. Every actor in this is fantastic. But I felt like maybe there's something that I'm missing. And so I dug deep into trying to figure out if I could determine what, everyone was like, it's based on Icelandic folklore. And I was like, great, which part of it? And so, like, I really tried to figure out what he was reaching for. And I think that you hit it on the head. I think that it's twofold. I think it is, one, about stealing things that aren't yours from the natural world. Because my gleaning of Icelandic folklore is largely that a lot of it is about the harsh brutality of the landscape, about Icelandic people's relationship to the land, and the inverse. But I think the other part that it is about is tipped in that first conversation, because there is no spoken dialogue for minutes.
Yeah.
And then finally, Maria and Ingvar speak, and it's about, they say that time travel is possible.
Yeah.
And he's like, you could go into the future. And she's like, well, we could go into the past. And maybe I would go into the past. And so I think that it's
That's what they do. I forgot about the time travel conversation. Yeah.
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 And so I think that it's kind of a two-pronged thing for them. It's one about their relationship to nature and what you should and should not take from it. But it is also about accepting the present such as it is. On a certain level, Peter and Ingvar's relationship to Peter is based in the past and in who they used to be. And they show that again with, like, the music video scene.
Well, I think that his entire relationship, the uncle is a past figure, because whatever he and Maria had was a past thing that he keeps trying desperately to bring back up into the present.
No, and that's super fair as well.
So that's really interesting. Again, I forgot the whole time travel conversation at the start. That really kind of brings it all together here, like you said. So and that goes with what I was saying with her needing to accept what happened, because her denial of nature taking her kid away, right? Of nature plotting its course and hitting this couple with a loss, and her desire to go back to it. And it's driven by her, because also at the start, Ingvar says that he's happy, like he's all right with it.
He doesn't want the future or the past.
He's like, I'm good with where we're at. She is not. She wants to go back to the past when they were happy and when they had a child, right? And the steps that she does the wrong thing to get to that place, and it's a crime that gets progressively worse, that she worsens as it goes on.
It's a bit of an abduction story.
Yeah. And they play kind of in the way that Midsummer does it. They set it in a place where there's not much, where it's daylight all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that juxtaposition of, like, this is like an unnerving, kind of unsettling thing, but it's in a beautiful, sunny location, right? That consistently looks like that. And like you're saying with Peter also, there's the kind of, from both her and Ingvar, or like, he's okay to live here, everything will be swell, and then at the end is the acceptance of, obviously, like, we can't pretend like this is the past and we're all hunky-dory here. And that's when, like, she kicks him out at the end. She's like, you have to go.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are several times when, like, reality, like, smacks her in the face, and I think that also comes with the ending of, like, Ingvar getting shot. It's this reality of, like, what goes around comes around kind of scenario, because, like, what she does to the sheep mom ends up being done to the father figure that the that the dude is supposed to be for this child.
Yeah. And,
while she's away cleaning up her mess of getting rid of, like, the uncle, getting rid of Peter, Peter the pedophile. I don't know. He's
not a
not a
pedophile.
pedophile. He's not a pedophile.
He's not a good guy, but he's not a pedophile.
No, he's not.
No, I guess.
Um no, yeah, it's this weird like
Because it started with P.
yeah, it literally was because it started with P. But that was me, not the movie.
The severity of his crimes went up way too high.
No, he was pretty much a creep though. It was just fine. He like attempts to murder this lamb baby. You know, he's not leaning on the likable.
He thinks about it.
Yeah, he thinks about it enough to like grab the fucking gun and point it at her. Like
he had every intention. Yes.
He was 2 seconds away from pulling the trigger and ending this whole charade. And it was like, no, maybe we'll go back home and nap together in a chair. I've changed my mind.
Yes. Yeah, but it comes down to that's what she pays the price, and it's more than just her that pays the price. Her actions, her husband,
everybody.
The guy who was happy again, like that we established was happy and had. He's not the one that pushes to go back into the past to take the lamb baby, blah blah blah, right? He just kind of gets roped into it along, and obviously he is happy to go along with it eventually, but you know, there's still the price to be paid there. And really what it comes down to is that it ends up being the most damaging to Ada or Ada, I don't know how they say her name. Because when Ram Man takes her away, she obviously does not want to. She, might be happier because she's established her life with Ingvar and Maria, and now she's being taken away. But that's the price that everyone has to pay for the actions of Maria at the start of the movie and throughout the film. It's like in wanting to care for this child and wanting to be the best, parent for this child, blah blah blah, you ended up damaging them like like more than if you had just left them where they were.
Well, I'm glad you brought up her name. So, and this will be my kind of personal final note. As part of my research, right, because I was just so certain that I had just lost something, I also decided that I would go and look up some of the names. And what's really interesting is that Ada or Ada can mean one of two things: noble or happy. And if you think of it as noble, that kind of makes sense. She is of a very particular lineage. But also, if you place her in this idea of happy, she was happy with her family. Even if there were going to be issues potentially later on, in the moment, as far as we could tell, she was content. She was happy. Maria can mean either of the sea or bitter. And I think that if you look at Maria as this context of bitter, and Ada or Ada as this context of happy, I think that it kind of completes some of this metaphor, She takes happiness. She gave birth to happiness. We discover that her original daughter, the one that died, was named Ada. And she was happy through that. And then she takes happiness because she is bitter.
I think it's weird that they name it the same as the child that they had. Like, if I had a child and I lost it and then I got another child, I wouldn't be like, all right, second time around, let's try this one more time,
Right, that's the time travel. It's the denial of what happened. It's the denial of the way nature ran its course in their lives. And so it's the unnatural way that they go about trying to replicate the life that they had, trying to go back to the life that they had when you cannot.
Yeah. So, dear, if you had to give Lamb a rating out of 10, Or out of 5, what would you give it?
Out of 10, you had a stroke for a second
did.
there.
8 out of 10. That's crazy. That's insane to me.
I don't know. I'm gonna give this movie a 3.5.
Okay.
Because I did enjoy it, but I definitely feel like it left me with this feeling of like uncertainty more so than like I think that I was expecting or really wanted. Like I want to know more, but like the movie itself, you know, I am not like you who goes, well, I'm going to go to research. I go, well, this is the thing you presented me, and so therefore this is it. This is 100% the story you wanted to tell me. And so with that being said, you know, I still wanted more explanation for it.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, how about you?
I initially gave this a 3. I'd give it a 4 now. Now I understand better what it was going for, and I think it nails the presentation of it. I do think it could have been shorter.
Yeah.
It almost feels it could have been like a short film almost, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Even and still encompass. At the same time, I don't know. I don't really have any. No, I give it a 4. I'll leave it at that. No further elaboration.
I'm gonna give it a 4 as well. I think that it does this interesting job of presenting a modern folk tale that is also steeped in its very own tradition, but is applicable in a broad sense because it is placed in a cinematic language, in a cinematic framework that is a very shared cultural art form. Well, and for me, this is also drove me into a whole deep dive on the abject, on the monstrous feminine, because on a certain level, she is somewhat the villain of our narrative.
Well, yeah, she literally steals somebody's baby,
and kills the mom.
Yeah, raises it as her own, and then gets literal karma in the end. I don't know where my heroine was in that scenario.
And it presents us with things that horror films usually use for the abject. You know, the birth scene. You know, this kind of evil mother. The blurring of the line between the human and the animal, and it ultimately destroys her on a certain level so that she can redefine self. And I think that it's a really interesting movie. I do agree that it's a little long. It's got about 20 minutes in there that could have been about 10.
What, you mean the part about them watching handball?
Yeah, you know, just a little whee.
Honestly, I think that I would have liked it better if it was a short film. I think that because it would have been
45-minute to an hour thing.
Because it would have been like short and sweet and to the point instead of these like moments like my least favorite, well, my favorite least favorite parts of Dune, where you're like, all right, now look at this landscape for a little bit. Let's just all kind of mentally zone out and look at this shit over here.
Mm-hmm. You're meant to be on spice nice. When you watch Dune. That's why.
That's right. You're like, but the plot was over
You're
there.
Supposed to be on your spice of choice.
No, Zatar love.
Little bump.
Well,
right at the nose.
No, ultimately, I think that both of you have made some pretty fair points. It definitely could have been a little bit shorter, but ultimately, I think it's interesting. I'm not sure it's one that I'll watch regularly, but it's fascinating.
I think, like I said, it's once you're able to decipher, I guess, however you want to decipher what it is trying to do, what it's trying to say. To me, it successfully executes those. Like every part of the movie is streamlined to those ideas that it's presenting. Yeah. There's no distraction. It's not like Antlers where there's too many ideas and none of them, end up sticking. Or not enough of them end up sticking. Here, I think it has its ideas and sticks to it and does it. So
I think that I would like it more, and I want to rewatch knowing like where it goes,
That's
and then
fair.
like getting to rewatch the journey to that end point.
Yeah, that's part of where you're like, yeah, where where every piece you can like upon rewatch you can re-examine it like kind of in a new
Mhm.
light. Oh, well that part now I see what the point of that was or knowing where it's headed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely one that I think would be better on a rewatch.
Well, I think that
Just got to cut those 20 minutes.
Handball, man.
I think
You watch Lamb on 1.5 speed or whatever that people do. There you go.
That's psychotic.
Before we make our viewers too old, why don't we go ahead and jump into our next movie, Old?
Woo!
And as always, we have a clip, so take a listen.
No kids allowed on the beach? What?
That's not true!
Oh no! Oh no!
We never leave each other. Nothing separates us.
Are we there yet? You said 5 minutes. Technically, it's been more than 5 minutes.
Let's just all start slowing down. Wow, do you believe I found this online?
So that was Old. The premise is a vacationing family discovers that the secluded beach where they're relaxing for a few hours is somehow causing them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. It is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It is written by M. Night Shyamalan, and it is based on the graphic novel Sandcastle by Pierre-Oscar Levy and Frederick Peters. And it stars Gael Garcia Bernal, Vicky Cripps, Russell Sewell, Alex Wolff, Thomasin McKenzie, who was in last week's episode on Last Night in Soho, Abby Lee, Nikki Amuka Bird, Ken Lung, Eliza Scanlon, and Aaron Pierre.
Yeah, mid-sized Dan.
And I guess I'll go ahead and kick this bad boy off. So it is based on a graphic novel called Sandcastle, which is written by a French director-writer and illustrated, I think, by a Swedish illustrator and graphic novel writer. And there are some sort of key differences, just as a bit of background from the graphic novel to the movie. The first thing is there are still two families, but in the graphic novel they are Marianne, Robert, Zoe, Felix, and their dog Elvis, and then Charles, Natalie, Sophie, Louis, and Grandma. Grandma does not get a name in the graphic novel. One of the big differences here is that the nurse and her and his husband, the nurse and his wife are Florence and Oliver, and they are accompanied by her father, who is the science fiction writer who we'll talk about later, Henry Lascaride. And instead of mid-sized sedan, we have a man named Amasan, who apparently only gets his name in a few panels, and for most of the time is referred to by the guests of the beach as the Arab.
Oh, good. I am so glad that they replaced that with, like, the black guy doing black guy stuff in this one. Good.
And
he's definitely gonna hurt everybody. The black guy trope.
It is written by M. Night, and he apparently was gifted this graphic novel by his daughter, and they worked on developing the story of it and changing some of the elements of it together. One of the other big notes, and I won't say right now what the ending of the movie is, but one of the big changes is that the graphic novel provides no ending. Everyone just gets to the beach and dies on the beach. And that's fucking it. And like in the trailer, you've probably seen it. There's like the daughter of one of the families gets pregnant. In the movie, spoiler alert, the baby dies. In the graphic novel, the baby lives and like wakes up to essentially find all of her family dead on the beach. And that's how the graphic novel ends. So, Old. For me, I like a lot of M. Night Shyamalan, not all of M. Night Shyamalan. I'm in the controversial camp of liking Lady in the Water. I enjoy Signs. I enjoy The Sixth Sense. I enjoy the entire Pittsburgh trilogy of Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. I think he's a compelling filmmaker. I think that he has very distinctly, every time he sets out to tell a story, something that he wants to tell. I think Old runs headlong into what I'm going to call Ready Player One syndrome, which is there were problems in the source material that he tried to fix, and it maybe fixed some problems, but I think it created other problems. And when I first finished the movie, I liked it all right. And then the more I thought about it, the more I went, what the fuck? And I think that it started to, the more I thought about it a little bit, the further that I got from it, started to harm my opinion on the movie. I think the performances are great. I think it has some legitimately creepy, scary concepts and scenes and things like that thrown into it. But ultimately, I think that I understand why a lot of people don't like it, and I'm a little bit kind of middle of the road on it. Nick, what did you think?
I like this movie a lot.
Yeah.
I like this movie is so much just like a Twilight Zone episode, both in like concept and execution. To me, it is just like a really like concise sci-fi thriller about these people who end up on a beach that makes you old. And I think it's just fun to see them play around with that. I like the ideas they come up with of what all that would entail if everything was rapidly aging, or just people, just biologically, if things are rapidly aging at this location. I think they have fun with it. I think the thrills are good. I think the camera work is really fun and how it does like reveals for older people like that. It made me, I like where it ends up at the end of like, if you were in this situation, if you rapidly, because it's not just physically that you age, it's also supposed to be kind of mentally and emotionally, right? So it's kind of like if your whole life was condensed into like a few hours or a day or whatever, what would be most important to you, kind of deal. What would you be thinking of? Who would you want to be with? Blah, blah, blah. I think it has some really good, like poignant stuff in there. I don't like the ending in the sense that I wish that things hadn't been explained, because once he gets into like the actual, like, here's like why the beach makes you old, here's like the whole thing behind of like how this works and why it's happening. I would have preferred no explanation, oddly enough, because I think the explanation they go with then leads into like a weird like moral like a weird like moral thing that just adds a layer of moral what am I wanting to say here? I'll just say moral 10 more times. It's a whole new layer of shit that I feel is just unnecessary by the end of the movie. And I feel like it takes away from the more, I guess, like allegorical, metaphorical concepts that I've been dealing with that whole time. A lot of people hate like the dialogue and everything.
That's just M. Night.
And the way that characters speak. Again, yeah, first off, that's just M. Night. Second off, that's fun. I don't care. I do, because it's funny because I'll get into this movie I watched last night called The Night House. And that irked me because the dialogue in that movie is very unnatural and feels like a script, which is distracting to me because the rest of the movie isn't like that. So, but M. Night, especially with this kind of concept where it's like a really Twilight Zone-esque thing, I think that kind of unnatural dialogue kind of works for it.
Dear, what did you think?
I like the middle. I like the middle part. I like the part where they're aging. The beach part is the best part of the movie. The setup is terrible. The whole like resort stuff where people are constantly talking about time. It couldn't, like, I know what the movie is about. I've seen the trailer, and the whole like first third of the movie was like time and the past and the future and the present and how I feel about it and the time and the past. And I was like, oh my fucking God, nobody talks like this. It drove me up a wall. Like, I hated it. And then we got to the beach and I was like, oh, I like this bit. Oh, this is nice. And then we got to the end and I was like, how dare any of these people do these things? I was like, you're literally tricking people to go to this island for research?
And then it just brought up a whole bunch of other things that I didn't like about the fact that they had like brought all of these people here because they had illnesses.
Spoiler alert, random aside. Essentially, what ends up getting revealed is that the beach has this weird property where people age, and so a pharmaceutical company now uses the beach to test people for medications to try and cure certain ailments.
Cool. So I didn't like the fact that they, like, you don't know. You have people with fucking kids here. You could have had, like, people who were already terminal come and, like, basically, like, volunteer their time at this island to be like, I'm gonna die in X amount of time anyway. I might as well try out this experimental drug and see if it works. I'm already gonna go. Whereas, like, they brought these people here with, like, families. Like, they had kids. You have no idea what those kids are gonna have, and you're not treating any of the non-specific people. You're only treating the people that you chose. No, yeah, and it just, like, made me mad, because you're like, oh, this 6-year-old, who knows what this 6-year-old is gonna have in its lifetime? And you're just like, no, but, like, the mom has maybe a tumor, so, like, we're gonna test it out on her, though, and, like, forget everybody else. Forget the fact that, like, once they get to old age, they have other things that are wrong with them. You could have been constantly, like, if you were gonna do research, if you were literally going to do research, like, that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. You did sloppy fucking research. You should have tested everybody. Everybody the whole time should have been constantly, what was in the food? Nothing? It was just food, you say? It was just ridiculous. No, I liked the stuff on the beach. I thought that was more interesting. And then they were like, oh, spoiler alert, it's this coral that we've never seen the entire movie, even though we've been on one location the entire time. That thing that's been sitting in the middle of the ocean, never, until we needed it, was the whole thing that got us out of this thing. What? Sorry. No, I liked the middle of this movie. No, yeah, I think that the character study of it as these people, like, trying desperately to get off of this beach to go off and do all the things that they wanted to do, and then eventually, like, settling into the fact that this is the reality and, like, finding some peace within that. It is the stages of denial all throughout the entire movie, and that's why they waste so much time throughout the entire thing, and I guess ignore the very obvious, that's the answer, is the fact that they're in denial the entire time and are infighting. But that's interesting. And then they were like, it's because of science. How dare you make science the bad guy in the middle of a pandemic?
I also think that the other thing that kind of weakens the ending is that then the ending calls into question / weakens the setup and the lead up, the part that we do have in the hotel. This time that we could have explored some character dynamics, and we get a little bit of that. The ending then goes back and makes you question, like, when were they getting doped? When were they picked? How were they picked? And, you know, it was before all of that, but, like, I think that it retroactively harms the first few minutes of the movie, but then on top of that, one of the big issues that I have with the reveal at the end, and this is maybe me being a little bit too nitpicky, is that mid-sized sedan has a nosebleed the whole time. But he also is able to get stabbed to death. And we find out that he's a hemophiliac, but that whatever medication that they have been giving him isn't working. But he also gets cut along the cheek, and that heals.
So for me, one of the big questions that I have of the ending in relation to then when you go back and re-examine the entire plot is, how do certain things that you use to try and convey certain ideas or certain plots then function? Because if he is a hemophiliac and one of his conditions is that he has a nosebleed the whole time and is also then able to be stabbed to death, whereas other people get cut, stabbed, other things happen to them and they survive, how are certain people able to die then? Because it seems like you're able to heal certain things. And how is his nosebleed?
Well, all of the other... I think that I understand your point of it being him because of his condition, but I think that he gets stabbed to death because if you cut something vital, like, that's the end. Whereas, like, I think that all of the other cuts that dude does on the father are all superficial.
And perhaps,
and
but
so,
I think
like,
that
would
his
heal
nosebleed still
over
should have
time.
just been gone.
Well, I understand that him being slashed on the cheek and being the visual representation of time changing, it was a bad choice. I do understand that. But I also understand him also succumbing to the wounds of being literally stabbed through vital organs to death.
No, I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I think that the ending, to your point, is just probably the weakest point for me.
But I also just hated that entire character because of the fact that he was just the stereotype of a black man the entire time. He had no plot, pretty much. He had all of the, I bet they're glad that they, black don't crack jokes. And, like, the fact that, like, the one dude literally perpetually is like, this guy is gonna, like, rape and murder my family the entire time.
That's that
And, like,
character's point, though.
Yeah, that he's racist?
Yes, that character is a racist.
That's great, but, like, it could have, it was just, like, substituting from the original. I guess my issue is the fact that they were like, we can't have it be the Arabs, so now we're just going to have it be this black guy getting falsely accused because and have no character arc other than the fact that he is just the black guy.
I think they make the mistake of he's like one of the first to die, and then that is it for him. It is half the time, like, yeah, and he would have been one of the more interesting characters because he's there before anybody else is. He's there.
Yeah, but he, like, does, like, nothing
already before anybody else is. And he's one of the more, like, one of the more mysterious characters. Yes, but then, yeah, he dies before he's able to really do anything. So it's like, okay.
Going back to one of the things that I said initially, which is that this is kind of like Ready Player One, where, like, the text that you're adapting has problems. So you try to fix them, but you create new problems. In the original text, you've got two children of each family. Felix ends up having a child with Sophie. Lewis is just kind of there. Zoe, who is again one of the teenage people, one of the child figures of this, ends up then having a sexual relationship with Amasan. And in the graphic novel, they essentially call to the fact, it's like in one blurb in one panel, that the teenagers and the children aren't necessarily aging with their body. They're kind of stalled wherever they were developmentally as they grow older. And so I think that even though the text had a lot of really interesting concepts, this is one of those instances where the adaptation, because it still tried to maintain certain elements of it, and not just go, well, what if I just told a totally different story with the same sort of underlying premise? I think that it ends up creating a lot of other snags and snafus that make it in some ways almost just as much of an issue as some of the issues that existed on the original page. Because apparently there's and I haven't read it completely, I looked into it and that sort of thing. There are apparently like multiple instances of these children characters having sex throughout the entire graphic novel. And on a certain level, that almost feels, based on what I've looked at, is that they were much more of our perspective characters throughout the whole thing.
Instead of it being from a parent's perspective?
Yes. And so I think that we ran sort of headlong into, this text had problems, let's fix them. Oops. We didn't really fix them. We created some different problems as we tried to fix them.
I think that this movie could have done the what's that movie? The Shallows approach, where it's like, we just start at the beach and then unravel all of these things after the fact. I don't think that I needed literally any of the time at the hotel at all.
No, I get that.
Because it was just a lot of like, oh, we're setting up for the thing that you actually came here to watch, instead of me wanting to care about any of these characters or any of their problems. It was just kind of like, let's be really vague about a lot of stuff. And then, hey, look, the black chick has epilepsy, and let's have a whole moment with that. And then let's be, again, really vague about everybody else's condition until everybody has a confession moment on the beach, because we're all going to die here anyway. So I might as well be like, I wish I had been with that ugly guy instead of choosing this life that I chose. Man, being pretty is hard, and I made the wrong choices. We just didn't look good together, and then I'm gonna die like a creepy old witch in a cave.
No, that's fair.
Yes.
It got too in its own ass, and I think that I could have had a little bit more nuance and a little bit more, mystery to the whole what is it, instead of it just being like, and put a nice little bow on it.
Nick, what would you give it out of 5?
I give it 4 again. I like this. I watched it a long time ago though.
Okay.
I watched it, I don't know. I interviewed Alex Wolff for this movie back whenever that was.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I like it. I give it 4.
Nice.
Ending sucked. Stuff could be better, but as like I said, as far as what it wanted to do, the bigger ideas, not the plot ideas, but like the storytelling ideas that it wants to share, I think it gets it across. And like the near the ending, when it's just like the 2 kids are left, and mom and dad are finally gone. And it's just them out there. I was like, yeah, it was good stuff. I get it.
Dear, what do you give it?
I don't know if for me the good moments outweigh all of the like really sloppy setups to the good stuff. If you didn't want to take the time to actually like set it up well, it's like being like, oh, I had to read, half of a book in order to get to the last half of the book, in order for it to be good. Like, it's like getting through the paint chapter of Invisible Man. You either do or you don't. And it doesn't matter what happens after that for me. If you can't get through the shit, it doesn't work. I'm going to give this movie a 2.
Okay. I'm going to go for a 3, I think. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for a 3. Our next movie also features Alex Wolff.
It doesn't.
And this is a really interesting little thriller starring the one, the only, the enigmatic, the goth thespian, Nicolas Cage.
What?
And we've got ourselves a clip that largely consists of pig grunting.
Perfect.
So take a listen.
So that was Pig. The premise is a truffle hunter who lives alone in the Oregon wilderness. Oh, we're bookended by Oregon. Must return to his past in Portland in search of his beloved foraging pig after she is kidnapped. Written and directed by Michael Sarnowski, starring Nicolas Cage, Alex Wolff, and Adam Arkin. We started with Nick. Let's finish with Nick taking things away. Nick, what did you think of Pig?
Let me tell you right now, Pig was my favorite movie of last year. It was when I first watched it, like over the summer or whenever it came out. Never changed. Didn't see anything that beat it. 5 out of 5, perfect. No further elaboration. Just watch it. Like, just go watch it right now if you haven't watched it. I don't care. Like, I found it to be a perfect movie that just constantly surprised me. I had no idea where it was going ever, and I loved everywhere that it went.
Yeah.
Just a tremendous shit to me. I found it to be very moving, very engaging. I'm all about it. It's not at all what you think it is, and then it continues to not be what you think it's going to be. Fantastic. Go watch it right now.
Stop listening. Watch Pig.
Yeah, turn this off. Turn this off right now.
Dear, what did you think of Pig?
I loved this movie. I thought that to Nick's point, I didn't know where this movie was going. It has this like nice little like almost vignette kind of storytelling where it's like, you start in one place and you just keep going to different locations and having just a completely different kind of story happen while this man is searching for his lost pig. And it's weirdly like centered completely and utterly around food from beginning to end. Like I loved the chapter headings all being food. I think that this is probably one of my favorite Nick Cage performances in a very long time, where you actually get to see him. Like I love him in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse as like the noir Spider-Man. But like you don't get to see him in that. You just, get to hear his Nick Cage isms through a character who doesn't move his face. But I just this movie has a lot of heart to it in the weirdest ways that are very like endearing. And yeah, no, I can't say enough good things about it.
I think that is all fair. I really, really liked this movie. It is branded as a thriller, which I think almost kind of branding it as a thriller is as much of a disservice as labeling Lamb a horror film on a certain level. It is so much more than that label. This movie, and also I've seen a lot of people compare it to John Wick, and I think that is also just an appalling disservice to this movie.
It's a man searching for a pet.
Because
that's
even
it.
though it has some of that same element of this weird underbelly and this man that knows how to navigate it and these kind of strange otherworld criminal locations, it has some of that. And so, like, on that level, it is a little bit like John Wick, but also, on a certain level, it's kind of almost like Chef, right? It's about this man on this quest of rediscovery and his connection to food and how food connects us to other people. But it's so much more melancholic and so much more thoughtful than any of those films. And I agree with Lauren. I think this is a tremendous Nick Cage performance. I know that a lot of people love it when Nick Cage goes enormous and big and splashy with his performances. But this is such a well-restrained Nick Cage performance that the stillness of his character becomes eerie at times. And it's about It's about connections. It's about loss. It's about permanence. Sort of almost literally in the sense of Buddhism and those sorts of meditations on permanence, and how trying to hold on to things that are impermanent is almost futile on a certain level. And it's about carving out your identity and figuring out who you are. And his character, even though some people find him sometimes off-putting or uncomfortable, is comfortable with who he is.
Well, he's very unapologetically, and he's very someone that has finally, I guess, like come to be themselves fully, unapologetically. Like, is just no bullshit. There's no facade. There's no fake. There's no small talk. There's just like what do you call it? Genuineness.
Mm-hmm. and almost like with Lamb, ultimately at the end of the movie, he comes to term with his loss. If there's one thing that he hasn't finally figured out yet, it's how he feels about the loss of his wife. And finally, at the end of the movie, he has figured out through this journey to find his pig that he is comfortable with that loss. And also, that's the same journey that our younger hero, Alex Wolff, kind of has to go on. And that's the journey that they also finally sort of force Alex Wolff's father into, right? They're all people who are grieving.
Yeah.
It's also like an interesting tale of like once you've reached the top of whatever your goal was, whatever your dream thing is, and it's not everything that you hoped and wished for it to be, what do you do next kind of tale. Whereas like he's super content just living in his little like shack with his pig, going hunting for truffles and like living his little minimal lifestyle after having it all, having everything that he could have ever hoped for, and it not fulfilling that internal desire, that drive that pushed him so hard to get to those points. And that's a very relatable story and a very relatable journey as humans. What do you do after you have it all?
Well, and being at the top doesn't save you from the reality of what it is to be alive, good and bad.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me a lot of I believe it was Jim Carrey, that it was like at the height of his fame and was like, nah, I'm gonna pare down. I'm gonna do the things that I want to do here and there, but like I'm not gonna go as hard or as I did to get here, because once I got here, I didn't like it. I didn't like the people that I was around. I didn't like the person that I became. I don't want any of it. I'd rather just have something smaller, something simpler, because that feels more who I am, instead of just going towards the somebody else's idea of who I'm supposed to be, which I think is really in the part of the movie where he like meets his former like sous chef, who's now top dog in town, and he literally like tears him down a little bit. He's like, this isn't anything like the dream that you said you wanted, but you're doing it for all of these people, all of the people who don't even know your name and don't care because they just come here because it's a 5-star rated place. Why are you why are you
that's
doing
the
this?
defining scene of the whole thing.
I think that this movie is really lovely, especially for like the here and now, because of us being such a digital world, with Instagram and having an Instagrammable lifestyle and having the perfect of everything, and realizing that like those goals aren't attainable, and like truly self-evaluating and like wanting to know what you want and what you want out of your life, and like all Nick Cage wants is to live in his little shack with his pig, and he's willing to tear down a fucking city for it, and I love it.
Well, and part one, each of the three parts ultimately sums up, or is titled based off of the meal that is the most important exchange between characters. And so in part one, it's called Rustic Mushroom Tart, which is the meal that he makes that he shares with his pig, using the truffle that the pig found. And then part two are two important meals that he has. Mom's French Toast, which is the moment where he connects with Alex Wolff's character, and then, to your point, Deconstructed Scallop, which is the moment that he reconnects with his former chef and sort of lays bare the reality of life, of being an artist on a certain level, and on just really being a person. If you don't present yourself, who the fuck cares about you? And then you finally get to the last... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're doing it for likes. You're doing it for other people, and you're stretching yourself so thin in order to get to that point. For what? You're not getting anything for yourself out of that.
Mm-hmm. And then part three is a bird, a bottle, and a salted baguette. And, there's lots to deconstruct with that whole meal that they share, but one of the things that's the most important about that is he and ultimately his final antagonist break bread, which is this kind of, universal in the English language idiom of sharing a meal, of putting things to rest, right? You break bread, you sit down and you have this meal together to create an understanding, to come to a place together. And it's so important that, the final moment of it includes and ends on this idea of, the salted baguette, this piece of bread. And they finally sit down and they break bread. And all three of our characters come to an understanding over this meal.
And so it's such a thoughtful, meditative movie. And I didn't know...
It's astounding that this is the first film of this writer-director. I mean,
yeah.
this is their debut film. That's insane.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And also, like, I love the fact that we get to see different windows into how this character not only interacts with others, but how he has impacted those people's lives, from him just having this casual conversation with a child about persimmons to his former, another former sous chef who has become a baker, and she literally like hugs him, but that's like not the interaction that he has with the other guy who he basically like tears a new asshole.
He literally looks at her and says, "Do you still make it the same way that you used to?" Whereas with him, he questions, "Is this how you used to want to make food?"
Mm-hmm. And it's just really interesting because like you can see that she still holds him in such high regard and still respects him and his impact on her life, whereas this guy is just smizing to save face while he's in the front of his restaurant trying to butter him up with wine and a crappy fancy looking meal in order to get on this man's good side, to be deemed worthy in this god figure's eyes, whereas she's just like, just happy to see him.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely.
Yeah. So we know that Nick gives it a 5. Dear, what do you give?
Oh no, yeah. Pig, 5 out of 5. If not for the movie, but for that pig, man. 5 out of perfect.
Randy the pig.
Beautiful
Perfect
pig. I want that pig.
Honestly, I think that I'll go 5 as well. I think that it's rare that you get something that's so thoughtful, that's so crafted, that's so particular. And I really think that this was excellent from head to toe. So I guess we'll go ahead and try and wrap up this episode as succinctly as we can. Nick, what have you been watching lately?
Well, I finished watching all of the Mamoru Hosoda's Hosoda. I don't know how to say his name the right way. Hopefully that was okay. All of his films. I don't know if I talked about this last time, or maybe just to you.
You and I texted about it.
Okay, yeah, I watched. Well, he did, for you listeners, he did the Digimon movie. He did 2 Digimon movies. They're just combined into the Digimon movie in the American.
I think he also did the cartoon as well.
I mean, Digimons are the champions.
I'm sure he was. He was the OG Digimon movie, the original Digimon Adventure. Which is personally the Digimon movie was very formative for me. That movie whips ass to this day. Anyway, so I watched all of his stuff. I watched The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Really, really good. It's like a teen romance drama with time travel thrown in. Really good stuff. Summer Wars is very similar to Digimon movie. I like it less. Summer Wars is probably my least favorite by him. A lot of people like that movie. I don't dig it as much. Wolf Children, fantastic. Can't watch that. It's about raising kids. Can't deal with it. It's all too true once you actually have a kid. Everything is recontextualized as far as like movies and stories and all that. Wolf Children, fantastic. Boy and the Beast, pretty good. Like Boy and the Beast a lot. It's a kid who was raised by a bear and a monkey and a pig, and he's raised and fights the telekinetic son of a lion boar thing. It's a lot of fun. Good stuff. I watched Mirai, which was nominated for, I think, Best Animated at the Academy Awards the year it came out. Mirai was really good. Liked it, definitely. And then his newest one just came out. It's called Belle. It's supposed to be like a modern adaptation or a modern reimagining of Beauty and the Beast. It is that, but that's only like the middle section of the movie, which I liked. Then it's like a setup into it, and then it's like the Beauty and the Beast story. And then it's like if Beauty and the Beast ended completely differently and then kept going for like another 40 minutes. Takes place mostly like a virtual like online world that's like I don't know. His work is just so imaginative. There's nothing like it. It's gorgeous. The animation is insane. The art is insane. I really like Belle. Belle ended up being probably, I think it's my favorite out of all of the movies that he's made. Killer. Should be nominated, just like Mirai was, but we'll see. Watched all the Scream movies, including the new one. I liked the new one a good bit. I watched The Last Thing Mary Saw. That's on Shudder. I was let down by that one. I think it's too obvious and too slow. Little bit scary. And then other than that, I watched The Night House last night that I mentioned earlier. That's with Rebecca Hall. It is a horror movie. And I give that 3. I like good parts of it. I think it trips over itself once again in trying to be both like a literal supernatural, but also it's a metaphor, and the two don't end up meshing as well as they could. The implications of the literal supernatural part of it are too much. Like it's like it muddles the metaphor.
Okay.
Rebecca Hall is excellent in it, though, as she always is.
No, yeah.
Yes, been watching besides these things.
You've seen quite a bit. On our end, we pretty much watched all of these this week, and since it was Lauren's first week at a brand new job, that was largely what we stuck to was just this stuff. Beyond that, we have watched Peacemaker, which I think I maybe mentioned last week, and I'm still very much enjoying it. We also have been watching Jeopardy.
I'm devastated that Amy Schneider was dethroned last night. It struck me deep. I was really hoping that she would go the distance. But 40 games for the second longest streak ever, and the longest streak of any woman is still impeccable. It's fantastic. Yeah. And I was glued to my seat the whole time.
It's always nice to like watch somebody do something that they're like really, really good at, and you just go, how do you do this? And it was just great.
Yeah. I'm about to start. Oh, sorry. Keep going.
We've been watching Midnight Mass.
Oh.
We've got like 2 episodes left of it.
Oh, yeah.
Very inspired by Salem's Lot. Very openly inspired by Salem's Lot, I would say.
I gave that shit a perfect score, too. I got very little to complain about with that series. Great.
Twists and turns all the time. Surprising all the time. Incredible character beats. Really great character work. And we just finished episode 5 a few days ago, and like all I could do was cry.
Oh, buddy, just wait till that thing ends, man.
It's one of those shows where like, I know,
the last 2 episodes are.
It's one of those things where like I can't wait to watch another episode. Like there are some shows where I'm like, I mean, if there's nothing else to do, let's slap this on. Why not? Where I'm like, well, do you want to watch it? Can we watch it? Can we please? I gotta.
I watched like the first 4 episodes in like one night. I think.
No, so rare to find like a TV show that like really just like the whole thing is just chef's kiss.
He's good. Well, this is the thing also that Mike Flanagan has been trying to make forever. This has been like it's been like his real like big passion project that he wanted to get made forever. They didn't get the leverage to until obviously like the both Haunting of series. Yeah. Yes.
What was the other thing that you were going to say you've been watching?
No, I'm going to. I start watching the Jackass movies now.
Okay.
I see the new one Tuesday night.
Okay.
So I will be. I think I have seen all of them in their entirety. I'm pretty sure I have.
You got to watch the Shark Week episode.
I have not watched the show.
Okay.
I've never watched the show. I don't know. I'm sure I've seen clips or whatever the hell. But I'm pretty sure I've seen all the movies all the way through. I have not seen Bad Grandpa. If I have time, I'll watch Bad Grandpa, but I don't know.
If you don't have time, just watch the one episode that they did for Shark Week.
Just do it.
Is Jackass Shark Week or okay?
That's where it's streaming, like
Discovery Plus,
I think.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a thing.
Oh yeah.
And you meet some of the cast members in Jackass Forever in.
Oh, this was a new thing. This was a recent thing.
Yeah.
This was like this past Shark Week?
Yeah.
I'd never heard of this. I had no idea that Jackass did a Shark Week.
Oh yeah, they made Shark Week history.
We won't tell you what happens.
Oh, you just gotta watch it. You'll know. You'll know the moment it happens. What made history.
Fantastic.
Poopies.
I don't know. Have you seen all the Jackass movies? Have you seen this? Have you heard of this?
I am familiar with Jackass. I have seen some of them. I know that like the first movie or 2 are directed by Spike Jonze, if I'm not mistaken, which is fucking wild to me that the man that made Her
started out doing music videos and Jackass movies, but
you gotta start somewhere, man. You gotta trudge along until you get to make your art.
So, like, I'm like a scummy like heterosexual male enough to enjoy Jackass, to meet Jackass on its terms. and enjoy it. Again, I have not revisited these in years, to the point where, like I said, I'm not positive if I've watched all of them, but I think I definitely watched either 2 or 3. Is stuck in my mind. There's a stunt. I don't like the gross ones. I'm not good at that shit. The stuff where they're getting hurt and everything, that's a ball. The ones where they're just being gross are nasty. There's one that really stuck in me where they have like the big guy that's in the group. It just, it's like the biggest guy in the group. They have him run on a treadmill and he's wearing like this special suit that catches his sweat. And then everyone's got to drink the sweat.
I'm so sorry.
It's really awful. And so there's this very large naked man running and sweating from every orifice and crevice, and then goes into a tube and they drink it. It's awful.
Glad that I wasn't allowed to watch any of these. I've now learned
stuff
this.
like that. There's a lot of vomit. There's a lot of like literal shit and piss. That's what's so, I guess, is so like, oh my god, because with Jackass, like, it's real. It's not, there's not a lot of movie magic. That's just really insane people doing insane things. So I'm gonna watch them again. I'll let you know what my rewatch of the Jackass series and ending it with the new one and final one.
Yeah. Hopefully.
They literally said, Johnny Knoxville literally said, like, I can't, not possible.
I know that he's out, but I wouldn't rule out if it makes enough money, then continuing on without.
They'll get other people, I'm sure. If they ever want to keep it going, they'll get other people.
They already have a guy called Poopies, so.
There's a guy called Poopy?
Yeah, one of the new cast members is called Poopies.
That's his Jackass name. Good old Poopies.
Does he take shits? Is that his thing?
I don't know, man. All I know.
They already have people in Jackass who do poop stuff.
Well, now
we don't. Well, now we have the official poop mascot. Thank God.
The only other thing that we've watched lately is the movie Encanto. I like it a lot. I don't know if it had to be a musical. It is. Okay. If we look at the 3D Disney movies, I think Moana is the one that is like the most successfully collected together as a musical. It has reprises, like it has key themes and things like that. This, I think, because Frozen, like the last part of Frozen falls into that Disney trap of after the troll song, we don't have a fucking song again.
Right, yeah, that's the last song.
Yeah. And so this has music that goes all the way throughout it, or songs that go all the way throughout it, but it doesn't feel quite as collectively a musical.
The songs come out of nowhere.
On occasion, yeah.
They just go, we haven't had a song in a while, and we haven't had this person sing. They should have a song right now.
And so
that's just Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I think it could have done a better job of either layering in the music or just completely suck it out and just let the story speak on its terms.
Yeah.
And I also think that the movie doesn't necessarily have a villain, but I think that like two of the emotional payoffs at the end could have been set up better in the first half, so that they hit a little bit harder thematically in the final moments of the movie.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I really like it. Like I gave it, I think, a 3 or a 3.5 on Letterboxd. And so for the most part, I really liked it. Like I think that I prefer it to like Wreck-It Ralph 2 for absolute certainty. But I don't think that it's like
yes, I prefer stabbing myself in the fucking stomach than Wreck-It Ralph 2. Fuck that movie. God damn it.
But ultimately,
fucking hate. I hate that movie. Hate that movie.
I saw like the last half of Luca, and ultimately, like I prefer Encanto.
Oh, the last half of Luca.
Yeah.
What happened to the first half?
I just caught it late.
Bastard. I like Luca a lot.
Well, I'll give it another chance. I think that's pretty much all that we have.
When did you watch Luca?
We watched the last half of it at your parents' house because the girls were watching it.
Don't ever say that you've watched a movie if you've watched it passively with children. That's not really watching any movie.
The second half of a movie passively with children, yes.
That's why I never write down those movies. It's not us watching a movie. It's us explaining a movie to children who talk the entire time. It's not watching a movie.
Dear, do you have anything that you would like to say to listeners before we head off?
What movies did you like? Email us, comment, subscribe, do a thing. I'm giving you homework, guys.
They don't like any movies.
No, that's why they're listening to us complain.
They don't like it. They don't like a single movie.
Except for maybe Free Guy. And
except for Free Guy.
Tell me to my face if you like it, because like I'll give you a whole list of reasons why that movie is horrible.
Nick, do you have anything that you would like to say to the listeners?
Go see Moonfall. Go see Moonfall to see people stop the moon. Gotta stop before it kills us all.
Is that the new Marvel thing?
No, that's the new Roland Emmerich disaster flick with Halle Berry.
Moon Knight. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Moon Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Moon Knight, where Oscar Isaac gave us the the literal thing that Paul and I have talked about, where he said he did it for his kid.
Yeah.
That's how you know the heart was really in it. It was when you just did it for children.
I did it for my kid.
Also, my general opinion is that he got that British accent off of watching a lot of Mary Poppins, Dick Van Dyke.
Hello, governor.
Yeah. No, I agree with Lauren. Go and email us, what you liked from 2021, what you didn't like from 2021, what you would like to see in 2022. Ask us questions. We haven't had a question in a while. I don't know if that's because I seem intimidating and like I'll be a jackass based on your question, but I would love a question from some user. Any kind of question will do. Email us at thefilmbudspodcast@gmail.com. Go to the website and actually definitely go and sign up to our newsletter, because in February I'm going to share with y'all at the end of January, or at the start of January, our newsletter included the first several paragraphs of an essay I've been working on Halloween Kills. And our February newsletter is going to include the first chapter of my novella, Doom in a Darker Sky, which I referenced on the show like a year ago almost with Henry. So go and subscribe to our newsletter. I'll link that below. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, etc. And that's pretty much all that we have for y'all. I, of course, will also link where you can read Nick's stuff, Knotfest, Discussing Film, his personal website. And that's pretty much all that we have for you guys. Happy January. I hope that you enjoyed the movies that we missed in 2021. And get ready for next month, where we prime y'all for award season by doing an entire month of essentially historical films that won Best Picture. So be sure to drop in with us next month. Thanks, you guys, for listening. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.